Hey you guys, it's Peter, and I'm back. Of course I'm back. I'm not going anywhere. Beast! Peekaboo, I see you because I'm birds. I'm YouTube famous now. Available in the fall of 2022. The album Birds. Dad, AF, shimmy shimmy, rock on gold dust, woman, beast. How are you guys doing today? Well, happy Wednesday. You've made it halfway through the week. It's almost the weekend. Are you guys going to Halloween parties this weekend? What costumes are you wearing? What are you dressing up as this year for Halloween? That is the question. The other question is, will Jaclyn Hill be filing bankruptcy, or will Jaclyn Cosmetics be filing bankruptcy? There's a lot of speculation out about this right now, allegedly, based on the fact that her parent company over Jaclyn Cosmetics, Forma Brands, which is also over Morphe, which Jaclyn has been very tightly aligned with through the years, I think we know, has come out, Forma Brands has come out, and they have stated that due to mass amounts of debt, that they are possibly, as one of their considerations, they are considering possibly filing bankruptcy. And if they are the parent company, what that would mean is that I'm understanding, the way that I would understand it, is unless there was a buyout or something like that, that all of the brands that were underneath that parent company would be filing bankruptcy too, which would be Jaclyn Cosmetics, because Jaclyn Cosmetics is under Forma Brands, unless there was some kind of buyout, would be my understanding, okay? So, a lot of people are alleging that Jaclyn might be, just seriously stressed out right now. She did yesterday. Now, if you didn't watch my video from yesterday, I talked about that there is a lot of speculation and talk that Jaclyn allegedly stole her brand name for her new comfort cozy line called Cozy from another smaller creator called Kaylin Nicholson, and I did my whole video about that yesterday if you want to go and watch that. I talked a lot about that. I had a lot of receipts in there, and so anyway, it was interesting, the comments on there. A lot of people were like, go Kaylin, and a lot of people were like, I can't believe that Jaclyn would actually do this. I can't believe that Jaclyn wouldn't do the research to see if there were other, brands or influencers that had used these brand names out there. And we're going to talk about influencers and their brands in just a second, because I think it's important in talking about this whole thing to do with Morphe and Forma Brands and things like that. So what happened was, and Jeffree Star sounds off in all of this too, of course he would, because Jeffree Star always, he has to get in whenever he possibly can, and since Morphe did him wrong by cutting ties back in the day, and it's interesting because I'm watching a lot of people talk about how Jeffree Star is having a lot to say about this whole Morphe thing, and I'm like, do you guys remember that the reason that Morphe cut ties with Jeffree Star at that time was because Jeffree was so deeply seated in drama that he had put on himself? It wasn't just they one day said, okay, we're done working with Jeffree. I mean, it was there had been a lot of things that had come out about Jeffree that Morphe finally said, we can no longer work with Jeffree Star. There were a lot of serious allegations that had come out. So it wasn't just one day they said, we're not going to work with you anymore, thank you, whatever. It was there had been a lot that had been leading up to that, right? Okay, but Jeffree Star, of course, he, chimes in on this whole situation. But let's go back to about 5 or 6 days ago. Women's Wear Daily put out an article, okay? Now, to read the article, you have to subscribe to Women's Wear Daily, and I don't subscribe to Women's Wear Daily. But there are many magazines that do, apparently, because they have kind of gone in and done a shorter version of what the article is about. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to read one of these articles. This is from, hold on a second, Finance World. Finance World reported directly from the Women's Wear Daily article, and they said, Morphe owner Forma Brands said considering options, including bankruptcy, cited from Women's Wear Daily. Forma Brands, the parent company of Morphe, Lipstick Queen, and Jaclyn Hill's Jaclyn Cosmetics, is considering filing for Chapter 11 bankruptcy, sources confirmed. People familiar with the process told Women's Wear Daily that such a move is under consideration, but stressed that nothing is certain and that other options are on the table, including out-of-court agreements with creditors. A spokesperson for Forma said, Forma Brands is engaged in constructive discussions with our financial stakeholders regarding ways to strengthen the company financially and enable us, basically meaning that they're trying to get other backers to support the brand and probably buy, I would think, the debt that they have to some degree. So they're basically what they're doing is they're selling debt to some degree, okay? The company financially enable us to reinforce our focus on the opportunities we see ahead for our brands. We are excited about the products we will continue to bring to our customers. Majority owner private equity firm General Atlantic declined to comment. The news was first reported by Reorg Research. General Atlantic acquired a 60% stake in Morphe in 2019, which was at the time a popular brand run by brother and sister Chris and Linda Towell that, I'm probably mispronouncing their last name, that grew in large part due to partnerships with influencers. The deal, and that's important, I think, when you talk about this whole thing, okay, is that Morphe, I think we know, is so closely aligned with their partnerships with influencers that now that we're not really looking for influencer brands as much, especially since like the pandemic and all of that, and people aren't spending their money on influencer brands as much. I think that that has had a great effect on all of this, okay? The deal valued the company at $2.2 billion. The Towels had already taken Morphe from being a trade show makeup brush brand into a full-fledged operation by aligning themselves with the early makeup influencers such as Jeffree Star and James Charles. When General Atlantic became involved, the business was at a high and profitable at the time of its investment. Morphe was said to be doing about $500 million in net sales with about $130 million in earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. But then several factors occurred that weighed on Morphe's performance. First, COVID-19 struck, leading color cosmetic sales to decline industry-wide. Then, Morphe cut ties with Star and Charles amid allegations of inappropriate behavior. Plus, supply chain issues plagued their business. Forma, the parent company, was formed in 2020 as part of the business's diversification efforts. The business also launched a sub-brand, Morphe 2, and made several acquisitions, including Lipstick Queen and Playa, and incubated brands including Bad Habit. In March, former Too Faced executive Eric Hull joined Forma as Chief Executive Officer, taking over from Miles McCormick, who led the business through its growth era. Hull was president at Too Faced when General Atlantic sold it to the Estee Lauder Company for $1.5 billion in 2016. In 2021, Forma landed at number 80 on the Beauty Incorporated Top 100 list with an estimated $350 million in sales. You know, I think it's interesting in reading these numbers, first of all, when we talk about like influencers and we talk about drama and we talk about like, you know, when I get comments and people say things to me like, well, why do you really care about what these people do? Or, you know, like if they're acting inappropriately, why do you care about that? Well, what it really equals at the end of the day is dollars and cents, right? Like this is really one of, and we saw this with like, you know, the Jeffree Star and the Shane Dawson series that they put out there, and Jeffree basically said it, you know, this is $1 billion business, right? I mean, this is really about money to these people at the end of the day. I don't know, and this is where my issue has always been, is that I don't know that it's really about relationships that these influencers build with their audience. I think it's really about getting the next deal and making the next big money in their pockets, right? And so for me, I've always had an issue with that. And way back in the day, when I first started doing drama commentary on beauty influencers, the reason why we existed was so that you guys knew what was going on with these beauty influencers, so that you would know who you wanted to spend your money on and support. And through the years, I have received so many comments from people that have said to me, I really, really appreciate what you do, because I'm not on Twitter and I don't read these Reddit threads and I don't really know what's going on. And if it weren't for drama channels reporting on the bad habits of beauty influencers, I wouldn't know whether or not I was supporting the right people or not. So, that's a really big reason why drama commentary channels have existed within the beauty influencer space for a very, very long time, okay? Well, Jeffree Star had something to come out and say about this. Jeffree Star came out and he said, hold on a second, the owner of Forma and Quick Panic severed the relationship with my brand and ruined the entire company. No loyalty, it speaks volumes, and it was one of the biggest backstabbings I've ever felt. Linda and Chris had no control, and I will always respect them for their hustle and for believing in me. Here again, Jeffree Star taking absolutely no responsibility for his mistakes and his horrendous behavior, okay? And, I think, what needs to be remembered is, at the time, what was going on with all of this when we're talking about Dramageddon and the things that were coming out that Jeffree Star was saying and all of that, right? I also think it's interesting that Jeffree Star wants to talk about severing ties, all right? But when push came to shove and he was put into a corner and people were demanding that he come out and make a comment when we were talking about the Trisha Paytas and the Hair by Jay situation, when Hair by Jay was somebody that had exclusively done Jeffree Star's hair and wigs for a very long time, Jeffree Star posted a Twitter response and said, "Good morning to everyone except for the person or the guy that does my hair," right? Which, even though 2 weeks later he was hanging out with Hair by Jay again, what we all took from that was that he had severed ties with Hair by Jay because he wasn't okay with Hair by Jay's behavior in that situation with Trisha Paytas, no matter what his relationship was with Trisha Paytas, right? With Jeffree Star's relationship was with Trisha Paytas. So for me, it's really hypocritical that Jeffree Star wants to come out and say that Forma Brands shouldn't have severed ties with him based on his bad behavior that was affecting their company. People were going to Morphe and saying, you have to sever ties with Jeffree Star. You've severed ties with James Charles. You've done it. Why are you not severing ties with Jeffree Star? People didn't understand it. I don't know if people don't remember how this all went down, right? So for him to come out all these years later, not to mention, I think it's rather grandiose that he says the owner of Forma and Quick Panic severed the relationship with my brand and ruined their entire company. That the fact that the only way that Forma Brands was ever going to exist and make any money was off the heels or the coattails of Jeffree Star and Jeffree Star Cosmetics is ludicrous to me, right? Especially today, and the statement was made in the last week, when Jeffree Star cannot sell out of a collection to save his life, all right? None of his collections sell out. He constantly has to do sales. If you're on his email list, you get weekly lists of sales. And I think a lot of it is the culture of beauty and the culture of makeup is just really, really changing. I don't think people are really spending mass amounts of money on makeup anymore. I just don't think that they are. I think that they're going for more affordable makeup and things like that. It was interesting because I was watching this episode of the show on Wow Presents last night, and it was called Bring Back My Girls, and it was with T.S. Madison, and it was the cast of RuPaul's Drag Race UK versus the World. It was really good. It was 38 minutes. Anyway, one of the questions that's asked in there is to Mo Hart, and somebody says what's a really good foundation, and so she's talking about different foundations and for somebody of her skin tone and things like that, and she's talking about Juvia's Place, and she's talking about Fenty Beauty and things like that, and in there she talks about the price point of these things. She's but for the price point, she's you can't go wrong with and she says something about Patrick Star and whatever in there. His setting spray. And, I think that is something that a lot of people today are considering. People don't want to pay $52 for a palette. I'm sorry, Jeffree, they just don't. Especially on a palette that's made out of cheap plastic that they've gotten 6 other times before and it looks almost identical. People don't need collections anymore of Jeffree Star Cosmetics. They don't need whole walls of all of Jeffree Star's mirrors. Are there a few people out there that are diehard Jeffree Star fans? Yes. But the other thing is that people forget is that Jeffree Star has ruined his own career to some degree by his own behavior and his own getting involved in drama, of which he takes still to this day no responsibility. This statement that he put out here, to me, is such a just a blanket statement to me of that he hasn't changed at all. So when people come over here and they say, what evidence do you need from this man that he has changed? Well, this is evidence that he hasn't changed, okay? To say that a complete failure of a business is based on his business alone and their severing ties. Number one, what he's saying is he doesn't take any responsibility for what got him severed to begin with. He doesn't take any he doesn't think anything that he did was wrong, okay? None of his behaviors, none of his actions, none of the things that he has said in the past does he think are wrong. So he stands behind those things that he has said. All right, and that doesn't indicate any kind of change. Forma Brands is probably like, we're glad we severed ties with you, okay? Like, you were just a sinking ship to begin with. And I don't think they were going to be making any more money. Jeffree Star Cosmetics isn't making any more money. Hell, I'd love to see those numbers. You know, I'd love to see the numbers on Jeffree Star Cosmetics based on 5 years ago. And do I think that that's just because of Jeffree Star's his reputation? No. I also think that that is just the industry today. And I think that that is people are just not spending as much money. And I also think that when people want to go spend money on cosmetics today, if they're going to spend money on cosmetics, they're going to spend more money on dupes. They're going to spend more money on, CVS, Walmart, Meijer makeup. They're going to go spend money that is affordable to them. They're not going to spend money on influencer makeup to support their influencers, especially when their influencers are problematic and don't really seem to value them as a customer to begin with. And this is something that I have been saying for a very, very long time in my videos, okay? Is when you continue to push the buttons of your audience and you continue to not respond to your audience and not give them answers, and I'm talking about Jaclyn Hill right now, okay? She just came out yesterday and she posted something on her Instagram story, which I'm going to talk about in a second, which I think amidst a time when you might possibly have to be filing bankruptcy or spending a large part of your money to buy out your very own company on this, or get backers to buy out your very own company. I don't even know how that works. Amidst that time, you might not want to be pissing off your fans by reminding them of a really bad time of something that happened. So here, I'm just going to talk about it right now, okay? So what happened was, and I'm not going to put this up there because it has the person's name on it, but she put the cozy thing up here, and then somebody put underneath here, pretty crazy how a couple years ago she was canceled for fuzz on lipsticks, and today she is running multiple successful businesses, is living her best life, engaged to the love of her life, on a healthy journey, etc. So happy for her. Just another testament to believing in yourself no matter what anyone else thinks. And I'm really happy that Jaclyn Hill is happy and that she's engaged and she's on this health journey and things like that, right? Okay? To talk about running successful businesses, she's never really come out and responded or taken accountability for any of the failed launches or the problems that many of her businesses have had. You know, it's like, when I did this video yesterday, I got comments and people were like, where's her website that she put out a year ago, you know? Or where is the answer still to this day about the 6 labs that were going to do scientific studies on her lipsticks? We never got the answers to that. You know, or what about 23 million people? 23 million people. She's only got like 5 or 6 million people on YouTube. 23 million people were on her website all at one time, and that's why it crashed. It was a complete lie. It was an absolute complete lie. But she does it. She just wipes it off and acts like, what? Who, me? No, they'll believe it. She never even comes out and addresses it, right? She goes to, let me show you my brand new outfitted car that took me over a year to make. And I'm not even going to thank the people that helped put it, you know, like in my driveway. Instead, what I'm going to do is remind everybody, and I've continued to say this, okay, that in 11 years on YouTube and as an influencer, the number one thing that I've learned is that people are really awful. But wait, okay, she posts another one on her Instagram story. And this one says, from fuzz on lipstick, this person says to her, from fuzz on lipstick to the fuzziest comfy cozies. And she responds and says, turn your trials into triumphs, guys. Well, why don't you respond to the fact that instead of turning your fuzzies into cozies, why don't you respond to the fact that you might possibly have stolen the name from a smaller creator? Why don't you address that? Or in 4 or 5 years, are you going to put it in an Instagram story when someone DMs you about it, okay? You know, there were a lot of people that were let down and lost fandom over Jaclyn Hill and how she addressed that whole lipstick thing. For her to kind of make a joke out of it today, it's like, and I understand, like, hey, being humorous over things is kind of how you deal with it. But at the same time, it's like maybe instead of making a joke out of it, if you really are so sincere like you were in your video that you put out years ago when you said, like, this was the lowest point of my career, I feel horrendous about it. Now you're kind of like, anytime anybody says anything critical about it, she gets very upset. She can make a joke out of it, you know, at her own expense, but she gets very upset if anybody questions it. You know? And this is where I think that, and I've said this for a long time, that if these influencers aren't putting out videos, Jaclyn never puts out videos, Jeffree Star hardly ever puts out videos, okay? If you aren't putting out regular videos, and you aren't connecting with your audience, and you aren't, like, interacting with your audience, that are your customers. Because if you don't have an audience, you don't have a customer base. Who do you think is going to be buying these cozies of Jaclyn Hill's if she doesn't have people that are invested in her as an influencer, going to her Instagram account and going to her YouTube? Nobody. Nobody cares. Like, in the real world, like, let's just be for real. And this is the arrogance, the cockiness, and the ego and the pride of these people, that in the real world, if you took a microphone and a camera and you went out and you said to people on the street, do you know who Jaclyn Hill is? Maybe 1 in 100 would know who they were because they had watched her videos doing makeup way back in the day. That's it, you know? I'm surrounded by a lot of people that love makeup, and even then, most of them don't know who these people are. And if they do, it's like, well, I watched Jaclyn when she first started way back in the day, and I loved her because she was just this relatable person that would sit down and do these get-readies with me. When does she do that anymore? She doesn't, okay? Therefore, the marketing to her many businesses that this person claimed that she has lost. Jeffree Star, he doesn't put out videos, and if he does, they're about yakety yak and don't talk back yak farms, right? So his marketing is lost too. He hardly ever does any kind of makeup videos, and those he's moved over to TikTok because he's not getting the views that he wants to get on his YouTube, right? So I do think that when we talk about influencer marketing, you know, James Charles, it's like, you can't sell those palettes. I mean, they are clearance racked, marked down, 50% off, 75% off at Ulta, and you cannot get rid of those, okay? And that was his collection that he did with Morphe. So do I think that, you know, like, influencer marketing today is the same as it was? No. I think it's passed by. And this is also why I say, like, when your career is going down, like with James Charles, why are you coming out with a makeup brand when your career is on the downfall? Like, why wouldn't you try to build your career back up and then come out with a makeup line? Like, it really doesn't make any sense at all, right? You know, and I don't know, like, how these private companies are, like Lunar Beauty and Jeffree Star Cosmetics and Tati. I don't know how those companies are doing, you know, on their own. I have to believe that they are struggling as well, because I just don't believe at the end of the day, people are spending that much money on influencer makeup the way that they were in the past. And I do think that if Forma Brands was willing to have a statement saying, we are considering bankruptcy, basically what they're saying is, get ready, because the next step is going to be, we are filing bankruptcy and announcing it. And if that's the case, then that means that Jaclyn Hill already knows this and is already getting her ducks in a row for Jaclyn Cosmetics. Is that the reason why she put out this new cozy brand? I don't know, you know? Because Jaclyn's always somebody that seems to be shuffling her money around, because it's always about money to Jaclyn. And call her a smart businesswoman, I don't know. But, like, is that what it's about? You know, why she said this brand is going to be her legacy? And it's not Jaclyn Cosmetics anymore? I don't know. I don't know if she's going to get her own backers and try to buy her own company. I don't know how that works. I really don't. And you know what? Listen, okay? Whatever issues that I have with Jaclyn, whatever issues I have with Jaclyn and her businesses and all that kind of stuff, and her as a businesswoman, I don't wish for her to lose her business at all. Like, that's her dream, you know? Like, I want her to have her dream. I want her to continue to have Jaclyn Cosmetics, and I want her to continue to thrive. But I think for her to be an influencer, I think for any of these people to be an influencer and for their businesses to thrive, they have to interact with their businesses, you know, and they have to interact with their audiences, and they have to be out there and, you know, whatever. Like, is it really so killing for you to put out a video a week? Like, one video a week? You know, don't forget where you came from. This is what got you your business to begin with, right? It's like you wouldn't have this business if it wasn't for that, and I think that they kind of forget that sometimes, right? I don't know. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with Forma Brands, and if they do file bankruptcy, and what happens as a result of that. What happens to these underlying companies underneath there, you know? Do they just happen to non-exist anymore, or will other people buy them? I will say this, like, Morphe is a pretty big brand, you know? Like, for Morphe to not exist anymore, even if they aren't doing influencer makeup and whatever, for Morphe to just not exist anymore would be interesting. You know, the other thing is that people have speculated for a very, very long time that Jaclyn Hill, they speculated about Jeffree Star too, but that Jaclyn Hill was a backer or financial supporter of Morphe and all of these brands, right? If that were the case, I wonder, and I don't know if that's true, I don't know anything about that. There might not be any truth to that whatsoever, but people have speculated that for a long time, right? Like, how is this going to affect her on the grand scale, you know, and how is it going to affect Jaclyn Cosmetics? I don't know. Like, this is where I feel like if I were Jaclyn, I would get ahead of the story. And and Jeffree Star put out the comment, I mean, he had nothing to lose, right? But if I were Jaclyn, I would have come out in a video, and I would have maybe even just done a get ready with me and talking about it. Or I would have come out and said, hey, a lot of people are talking about this. I mean, her name of her company is literally listed in every single article that you see about Forma Brands. This is a huge story, you guys. This is a huge story. It is listed in every article about Forma Brands possibly filing bankruptcy. Her company is number 2 next to Morphe, okay? And yet she hasn't addressed it or said anything whatsoever, but she considers herself a really great businesswoman. This is where you want to get ahead of the game and say, hey, you guys, don't worry about it. Jaclyn Cosmetics, we are also talking to our attorneys, and we are also figuring things out. Jaclyn Cosmetics will continue to exist. Or for her to say, you guys, I don't know what's going to happen. You know, I'm really scared and I'm really sad, and this has been a dream of mine for my entire life. I don't want to lose it. You know, I understand that what's going on, and we're in talks as well. But for her to keep her people involved in all of that, you know, and this is where people are like, well, she doesn't have to do it. No, she doesn't have to, but it would be smart. It would be smart for her to humanize herself as a business owner, for people to see that Jaclyn is stressed about this too. And that, because she's got to be. Why, how could she not be, right? So anyway, let me know what you think about all of that in the comment section below. I love you guys, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye.